Folks have had a chance to join us. And welcome to everybody joining us on the Girl Scouts of the Green and White Mountains Facebook page. We're excited to be here with you for the third of 4 classes for juniors on your Space Science Investigator Badge. In a moment, I'll turn everything over to our excellent teacher and presenter, Hannah Buckner. First, I just want to mention to you that if you have questions today, you can chat with us on Facebook and put them right in there, and I'll get a little ping to ask them of Hannah. Of course, please make sure you include your name. Just your first name is good, and maybe your location, just so we have a sense of where people are tuning in from. And if you've missed any of our previous classes, the 2 that came before this one, you can find them there as a recording on the Facebook page. You can also find them on fairbanksmuseum.org, which is where Hannah and I are from. We're happy to be partnering with the Girl Scouts on this class. And you'll also find handouts. Those handouts are an important part of your learning for this badge. So we do recommend that you complete them and certainly send your questions on to us if you have any while you're doing them. So without further ado, I will turn things over now to Hannah Buckner.
Great. Well, thank you, Drew, for that. And thank you for not stopping my video. That was great. So welcome back, ladies. And I'm very happy to be here and teaching for this 3rd week for you to get your Space Science Investigator Badge. I'm very excited for all of your success with that. And first, I just want to start off with if you have any questions about the handout that you had for last week. So what the class was on for last week was the orbit makes up a year. And so you were seeing that a single revolution around a single orbit around the sun, or any orbit around any host star, makes up a year. And so we kind of measure these times in Earth days, Earth hours, Earth years, because that's something that we are used to. And so we're using that comparison to look at another place like Mercury or Neptune, Pluto. And so you had your activity where you had to use Exploratorium and see how old you would be on different planets, like how many days old you were, or years. And so actually my Martian birthday, I believe, is coming up, or my Venusian, my Venus birthday is coming up. So I hope that was something that was fun for you to use to apply what you learned, and to know that the further you are away from a star, the longer a year is on that planet. But that doesn't necessarily apply for a day. We saw that some places orbit very fast, some orbit not that fast. And so it didn't really matter where you were, just how far you were that your year lasted. So that was a really fun lesson to teach. And so while you guys are thinking about that, I would love to know if you have any questions or comments that you had about it, something maybe that you didn't know before and that was really interesting. I would love to hear it right now. And if you do respond, give us your name and where you are so that we can know where you are. But while you're doing that, I will make sure that what we'll be talking about today is pulled up for you guys. Make it pretty cool. So I'll give you guys a minute or two. Don't feel scared to ask a question. Questions are great because it means that you can learn more about something that you want to learn more about, or something you don't understand. There's never such a thing as a bad question or a stupid question. I love to hear from you guys. So. Well, if nobody has any questions, we'll get started. So I wish we were in the planetarium because this would be really great, but we're not. So today we will be talking about constellations. This is something that is very easy to kind of take from what you've learned and then apply it because you can see them any clear night. We can't always see all of them just because we're in the northern hemisphere and we can't see stuff that are in the southern hemisphere. But it's definitely really cool. We'll be talking a little bit about some of the main stars that are in some of the constellations. We won't be talking about all of them that are in the northern hemisphere, but we'll definitely touch on some of the more well-known ones, maybe some ones that you don't know about. And so I'm very excited to share this with you. So let's get started. So you'll note, where is it? There it is. You will see that we are, let me turn it this way. We are looking southward in St. Johnsbury. It's not actually St. Johnsbury. Well, I don't think it is, but we are, let's say we're in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, which is where I am. And we are looking south at, this is 4:02 p.m. So we are going to move forward through time. And you can actually see where you can't see them in the sky when I take the constellation lines off, but you'll actually see that there are constellations during the day. But if we move forward through time, let's just do it like this, it'll be easier. You'll see that the sun follows this, this pointing the screen like you can see me, this red line here that the sun follows is called the Ecliptic Line, and it shows us the path that the sun follows during the day. There's also another cool thing about it that we will talk about in a second. But as we're going forward, we're seeing that it's about 6:30 now, 7, 8, and we'll go at 9:30. So this is right, ooh, I didn't know I could do that either. That's cool. This is known as the darkest point in the night. So we surpassed twilight, and now we are seeing the sky as we would if the sky was clear. And I'm going to leave the atmosphere on, but if I were to take the atmosphere off, you'd actually see way more clear night skies, because the atmosphere actually, like we were talking about in the brownies class last week, light comes through the atmosphere and actually gets bent or refracted. And so light is kind of scattered, and so the sky can be pretty bright because of light that is appearing over here. That's not important, but I'm just going to leave it on so you can see what it's going to look like around you guys. So I guess if I was seeing you guys in person, I would ask, what's something special that you think about this red line? But we won't do that. I'll just tell you. So something that is special about this ecliptic red line that is not really in the sky, it's just telling us the path of the sky as we're looking at it. You'll notice that there are these constellations that may sound very familiar to you. We're seeing Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and Libra. If you recognize them, you're probably recognizing that they are constellations of the zodiac, or they're commonly used in astrology, but you know, astrology is not a real science, doesn't really exist, doesn't really do anything special. But we've based them on where the sun is in the sky at different points in the year. So if you were to say be a Leo, that means during the day when the sun's at its highest, the sun will actually be where a Leo is. And so you won't actually see Leo during that point of the year, and you'll see the other constellations on the other side. So because I'm a Scorpio, it means that when I was born, on the day that I was born, when the sun was up, that meant that the sun was along with the constellation Scorpius. But they're cool. And there's some really cool ways to recognize them. So take this off. So some of the really cool ways to know what you're looking at, kind of the more difficult thing is, for me, I always love looking at the star Capella. Capella is actually my favorite star. It's a double binary system, meaning that there are two sets of binary stars, which means there are stars that are orbiting each other. There's actually two of them. And so it's really interesting. But if you go towards the west, you actually see these two bright stars. And those are Gemini. It's kind of hard to connect them, but you can see that there's like a line here, and they kind of like connect down with these lines, and they kind of look like legs. So they look like twins who are holding on to each other. And or you could say maybe that they have, it's one body and two heads, if you wanted. Doesn't really matter. They're just stars. But the more famous ones, if we go north, are around here. So maybe you have noticed that there's something in the sky that looks very similar. Not similar, very familiar. And I'll say that it is kind of near the north line. And it's right here. This is the constellation Ursa Major. But what you may not know is that this is actually not the whole thing of Ursa Major. We know this is the Big Dipper, and it's a part of Ursa Major, the Big Bear. I wish I could like turn it around and make it better visible, but this is a bear, where these are the legs and the front legs and the nose, and this is the belly button up here, and the ladle of the Big Dipper is the tail. Some of the important stars up here are, that's not what I wanted. We see Alioth, Alcade, Nizar, but this one is more known, Dubhe. Now, Dubhe, and I want to press on, thank you. Beta Ursa Majoris is the name of the star, or also known as Merak. Merak and Dubhe, Dubhe, I could completely be pronouncing it wrong. They actually, if you follow them, they'll guide you down to the North Star, which is Polaris. Now, Polaris is the end of Ursa Minor, which is the small bear, and unlike Ursa Major, where the Big Dipper isn't the whole thing of Ursa Major, the Little Dipper actually is the whole little bear, or Ursa Minor, where this is the body, and so the front legs, back legs, and the tail. The mythology behind that is really interesting, because there's not just one story about how these bears got their freakishly long, ooh, you can see shooting stars, their freakishly long tails. And we know that bears don't have long tails. So how do they get these tails? There are different stories about how someone either upset somebody, like always Zeus. Someone's always upsetting Zeus, or someone got attacked by a bear, or something else. But what always ends up happening is that Zeus takes these bears by their little tails, flings them around his shoulder like this, and flies them up to the sky. And they end up with these really long tails as they're stuck on the sky. So they're actually one of the most, they're one of the easier objects to find in space, or in the night sky, because they look like ladles. So if I take the constellation lines off, you can actually see them right here. They're very bright, and they're right near each other too, so you can actually figure that out. And the North Star always tells you where the north is, at least for now. It won't always be like that in about 13,000 years, but we don't have to worry about that. We've got about another 13,000 years to live, which humans don't live that long. So it's not much of a problem for us. If we, I have to orient myself, remember where some of this stuff is. Where are you? Let's see. Let me just do this. Oh, there we go. So, unfortunately, right now, we can go back in space time. Right now, because of where we are in space and time, Orion's actually gonna not be that visible during the night for much longer. But Orion's very easy to see when you actually are able to see him. Orion also is also known as the hunter, or a hunter-gatherer. He's usually pointing towards Taurus, which we can't see right now because it is, like I said, Taurus. Well, it's near Taurus. But you can always tell when you're looking at Orion because of these three stars that are really, really close to Orion. You have Alnitak. Come on, work with me. There we go. Alnilam and Mintaka, which make up the belt. But some of the more famous ones are Betelgeuse, which I keep getting asked about this star all the time in all my classes, because it's actually going to explode soon, because it's reached the end of its life and it will become a supernova, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Another popular star that's well known in this constellation is Bellatrix, and if you're a fan of Harry Potter like I am, you will know that a lot of the characters in the House of Black, or the Black family, a lot of the characters are named after stars. So we have Bellatrix. You actually will see Sirius, like Sirius Black over here. Yeah, but Betelgeuse and Bellatrix actually make up Orion's shoulders. And then you'll have Rigel, which is another really big star, making up like one of the knees or the feet. And then, but Bellatrix points out to the bow, and I think the bow, yeah, actually, you'll see that they have like all these weird names. So they're actually all called like Pi something Orionis, which is actually kind of cool that they do that. But you'll see that the belt of Orion actually point directly to Taurus, which is also pretty popular. We'll have Aldebaran, which is a really, really big star, and very bright, makes up one of the ears, I guess, or one of the eyes of Taurus. And then the Pleiades, let me turn this away. There we go. The Pleiades actually is a cluster of stars, but also connects to Taurus. So that's pretty cool. Wow, would you look at that? But let's turn this back on here. Okay, so we looked at Orion, and we said that it's with Taurus, but there's also other stuff associated with it. So It's a little dog, right? Yeah. Orion has this dog with him, and we much love this dog, which we were talking about with Sirius. So Canis Major is the dog constellation, and Sirius is like, sometimes it's known as his nose, sometimes it's known as his collar or his tag, but yeah, it's the big dog. Sirius is the dog star, but Canis Major is that dog constellation, and so there are quite a few big, beautiful stars that do shine around here. So we do know that Sirius is one of the brightest stars in the sky, but there's also Mersenne, which is another bright star. Then we have Lisen, Alurdra, and Adhara, which are connected to some other stars, but they're not really that bright. Yeah, and then some of you might be very interested in this constellation. This is Monoceros, which is a unicorn. It looks nothing like a unicorn, right? It's kind of just like this leg here, and then maybe a back, and then like a leg here, and then maybe this could be like the head and the horn. It's very strange, right? So the Greeks actually would look at these and say, you know, we're noticing patterns that we can see in the sky, so let's make up stories so that we're able to make sense about what we're seeing. And so that's why this may not look necessarily like a unicorn, but maybe it looked like a unicorn to them. It's also quite funny that the start of the horn in this image is the Cone Nebula. Yeah, maybe that wasn't like really what it was meant. But next to the unicorn, which is right behind Orion and between Sirius, is the other small dog, Canis Minora. And so you have Procyon, which is a binary star, or two stars that are orbiting each other at the back of the dog, and then Gomisia is the front of the dog. And he's playing at the feet of Gemini. One of my, when I was in school, I actually had to do a project on constellations, and so I had to learn the story of Corvus, which is the crow. And so Corvus, the crater, which is a cup, and then Hydra, which is either a river or a snake. The story is actually quite interesting. So the mythology, actually, let me see if I can pull that up. The mythology of it is actually quite cool. It's really cool. So essentially, I want you guys to see that. I will stop the share for now. So Corvus is a crow that was put to a job by Zeus. And Zeus, if you don't know, is the god, like the king of the gods in Greek mythology. And he had asked the crow to go and gather some water, I believe, or something from this river. Yeah. I want to show you this. Share screen. Love it. Okay, so we're going to, I just want to watch it. Whatever. Oh, there we go. Present. So constellation Corvus, it was the crow, which was believed to be the sacred bird of Apollo. And like I said, it's associated with Crater and Hydra in Greek myth, which are right next to it in the sky. And so the myth is that, well, I guess in this myth, Apollo sends the crow to fetch water in a cup for a sacrifice. Sacrifices were always made for the gods, and so they were very big egos, and they needed to have sacrifices for themselves. And so he sent the crow out to go get water. And as the crow landed near the river, he actually landed near a fig tree and neglected his job because he wanted to wait for the figs to ripen so he could eat them. And so the crow stays for a few days, eats the figs, and then returns with a snake, saying that the snake prevented him from being able to accomplish his task of getting this water for the sacrifice. And so Apollo is so angry about it that he actually throws not only the crow, but the cup and the snake into the sky. And so this created Corvus, Hydra, and Crater. So yeah, we won't really talk about the other mythology, but yeah, it was a very interesting story that we found that we really enjoyed learning about. And so that is why they're also associated together. Typically when mythologies or stories about these constellations are associated with each other, they're typically very near each other. There we go. Another one you might be interested in is, where is it? Ah, there we go. Let me turn around, take this way. So there we go. So there is a story of Cephas, Cassiopeia, Andromeda, and Perseus. There's quite a number of them, but I can let you kind of learn more about those on your own, or maybe come to a planetarium show once the planetarium opens up. But something really cool about this is that if you look at Andromeda, which is actually connected to Pegasus down here, Andromeda actually is, funny enough, named Andromeda because there is a galaxy right here called M31. And if you look at it in the sky on a very dark night, or you're in a location that's pretty dark and you're using binoculars, you actually see something that looks like a grain of rice. And that grain of rice is actually the Andromeda Galaxy. And so it comes off right off of the middle of Andromeda constellation. I think of it as her belt. And so right off of her belt is the Andromeda Galaxy. And then you'll have Almach, which is at her feet. And I'm trying to remember, I think it might be Almach that is part of the summer triangle. I could be wrong, but Almach is also a pretty well-known star. Unlike some of the Greek names, Almach was named by Egyptians because they also had a really big contribution to astronomy. Cassiopeia is Andromeda's mother, and Cephas is Andromeda's father, I believe. Cassiopeia is pretty easy to find in the sky because it looks like a W, and the stars are pretty bright. So this one's probably the easiest to find, Navi. And then you'll look and you'll probably see Ruchba and Shedar, which are part of that W shape. And it's also near the, no, that's not what I wanted. Oh, I need to turn on the planet for you to actually understand where it is. It's between the north and the west part of the sky. So if you are able to find Polaris, all you have to do is look to the left, and it should be right there. And it's just that W shape. And then Cephas is kind of a weird constellation to find because it just looks like a box and a triangle. But Cephas was a king in Greek mythology with, you know, his family Cassiopeia and Andromeda. But some people say that this right here, this triangle is his crown and the square is his body, and this artwork, it's the other way around. But they are also, it's also quite easy to find. I'm just trying to see if there's any like popular stars in each of these. Perseus, you may know him with some many mythologies. He is quite popular in Greek mythology and just stories in general. But one popular star is Mirfak, and then around his knee is Algol. They are pretty bright and easy to find. Just because if you see Cassiopeia and you follow these two stars of it, you'll find Mirfak, and then you just got to go straight down. You'll find Algol, and then you'll see that that's the Perseus constellation, and it's also right near Capella and right now near Venus. If we look up, there's quite a lot to see. Vega is a very bright star within the Lyra constellation. It's also very easy to find. When I was doing a lot of research while I was in college, I actually was able to use Vega as knowing where I was, because I would see it a lot, and it's this beautiful bright blue star that you can see, and it's part of Lyra. And so actually, when we see the Lyrids, which are a meteor shower that takes place originating in Lyra, they will start over here and they'll go either this way or that way, and so it'll be near Vega. And so you'll see not just Lyra, but I mean not just Vega, but some beautiful stars. Okay, so I think, wait, no, it's not one. I want this. So you can't really see it at this point in the night, but if we speed up, come on, thank you. You will notice that there is this band of light that is stretched across the sky, and it's very, very, very bright. That's actually the Milky Way Galaxy, which is it's a galaxy that we are a part of, like we were talking about in the first class. And if we take away the land, you'll actually be able to see it as it stretches across the sky. So this is actually seeing the front of the, yeah, I just want to confirm, yeah. So that's the front of the galaxy. Well, not the front, the center of the galaxy. And so very beautiful. In the summer, there's actually a thing called the summer triangle, which can help you also locate the galaxy if it's too bright or it just seems a little tricky. So I believe, yeah, Deneb is one of them. I can't remember the rest of them though. Oh, there we go. So Deneb, Altair, and no, not that one. There's a third star that has the triangle. Maybe it's, no, it's not Gaia. But Deneb and Altair are some of these stars that do have the summer triangle. Stop it. But yeah, if you are having trouble finding the Milky Way Galaxy, or you're thinking you just see clouds, that triangle is actually quite useful to help find it. Because the Milky Way Galaxy, when you realize what you're looking at, you're like, oh, that's a galaxy that I'm looking at. That's crazy. Or maybe you're not like me and that's not what you're like, but it's just like, whoa, all these like little dots we're seeing are stars, but like this big thing is a galaxy which contains so many stars, which is insane. I will say about Scorpius that this bright orange thing here is called Antares, and Antares is a very, very bright star that is kind of the connection between the long tail and like the feet, which kind of to me look like claws. But it is so, so, so bright. And it's really close to some clusters, which if you had a really a really strong telescope, you actually would be able to see like all of these different like clusters that are around. But it is so cool just to be able to see it and say, whoa, that is a really, really bright star. I believe also, no, there was another, I one time saw a, like just the light coming from a supernova, and it was like in this area. It was very cool. But yes, this is generally what you see at night. And you know, if you stay up all night, which I don't recommend if you're during school, but if you're going out and hiking or camping, these are definitely something that are really interesting to see because they tell you stories. Stories that have been passed down generation to generation because they helped people be able to sail, to be able to get around, and it's been stories that have told us our tradition. So yes, those are the constellations that are quite popular. I will say also, if you are looking during the night or the day, you'll notice that the Polaris star doesn't really have much of an orbit. It kind of just sits around the same spot. And that's because our axis of our planet is pointing towards Polaris, so it all kind of stays in the same area. But that's how we can tell what is north, because it tends to stay in the same area. Yes, so those are some of the constellations. Does anybody have any questions or things that they want to see, or stars that they like?
I was just holding on to a few questions. I think we can wrap up class. We actually have 3 great questions right now, and anybody else who might want to ask questions, feel free to do so on Facebook so that we can ask yours before we wrap up today as well. Katie was surprised to hear that there are many galaxies. Can you say more about many galaxies?
Yeah, so there are a ton of galaxies. When we are looking at galaxies, we can only really see just one because of the light in our sky and what we can see because of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is so bright, but there is so much that we can see, when we're looking through simulations. So I want to bring up, gosh, I guess it was this one. Yeah, there are so many galaxies in the universe. Actually, if I think I may have had actually a PowerPoint on that. Maybe it was week 1. I don't know. But basically, galaxies can cluster together and create local groups of galaxies. And so those galaxies form those local groups, and then local groups can have clusters of local groups, and those are called superclusters. And then the superclusters form the universe. And so galaxies actually are the main part of the universe, and it's really it is a really big portion of our world. I think this is it. Yes, okay. I'm gonna just share this. So there we go. Okay, so we are a part of the Milky Way Galaxy, and this Milky Way Galaxy is in a local group with all of these other galaxies. So we see the Andromeda Galaxy, Triangulum, there's NGC 3109, all of these other galaxies are, forming, and then the local groups form into the all these other superclusters, and we're part of the Virgo supercluster, which is here in the middle. But all of these different, all these blue spots and all these like white clusters are all superclusters of local groups, which contain tons of galaxies. And so, yeah, galaxies are very common. I can't count them. There's way too many. Yes.
Nicole wants to know, what constellation is your favorite one?
Ooh, I think Orion tends to have a very special place in my heart because when I would visit my grandmother my family is from New Jersey, and so I would actually visit my grandparents down at the Jersey Shore, and at night we would go outside and look up at the sky, and we would be facing kind of southward, and so I would always see Orion, and it was just like special to me to just like be able to see that. But I really like all of them. I guess Scorpius has also a special place in my heart because I was born during that time, and I was always interested in what it meant to be a Scorpio. It doesn't really mean anything, but it's interesting to know that's like where the sun is during that time of year, and that it is the home, not really, of all these like special stars and galaxies. But yeah.
So another question from Maggie this time. Are there new constellations being identified and named still today?
I don't believe so. They are changing over time just because of like if Betelgeuse implodes, we obviously won't have that shoulder of Orion anymore. But all of the constellations that we have, or at least the ones that we recognize, have been around for so long. I don't think any of them have been edited in the last 100 years. I could be wrong. I haven't thoroughly researched that. But there are different types of constellations. Some of them are different. Some of them are shared. There's different Japanese constellations. There's Egyptian ones. There's Native American ones that we don't even know about. It just depends on the culture that was looking at the sky and made a story about it. But yeah, I would encourage you to actually look into that and see what other kinds of constellations there are, and if we are thinking of changing them.
And we have a last question here, and I say last, although if you're out there and you'd like to ask your question before we end today, feel free to do so on Facebook and we'll get you an answer. But last question for now, I should say, is on a good note, similar to what you were just talking about, Hannah. Ashley was wondering, well, what is the story behind Virgo? And I know that probably depends on which culture you want to tell it from.
Yeah, so oh man, let's see. Virgo. Let me see if I can remember the story of it. Virgo. So the constellation Virgo is thought to be Persephone, who is the daughter of Demeter, who is the harvest goddess. I believe she was abducted, kidnapped one day, and then she ended up in the sky, but I don't particularly remember it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't really remember that one. But oh, here we go. It says that Persephone was taken by Hades, who is the god of the underworld, and her mother was so overcome with the loss of her child that she abandoned her role as the goddess of fruitfulness and fertility. And so when she was in the sky, that's when like winter is around, so like it starts to get cold, and harvest doesn't really bear fruit anymore. So Persephone has to return to the underworld for 4 months every year, which I guess is from when fall starts through, or maybe it's when fall ends through spring. And so that's what has to do with like Virgo, which makes sense, but I don't really know the story of how Virgo really ended up in the night sky. Sorry.
Yeah, Virgo is definitely just another name for Persephone. So definitely a similar story. You will be able to see her this spring and summer when she reemerges, as Hannah was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We had a really wonderful class with all of our juniors, and just a reminder that you can find all of these classes, including this one, hopefully shortly this weekend, up on the Girl Scouts of the Green and White Mountains Facebook page, along with the handouts that Hannah has created for you so that you can continue learning even once you're done watching the videos. And just a warm thank you, as always, to Hannah for teaching these classes. We'll have our final 4th class of the juniors Space Science Investigator Badge next Friday at the same time, 4 o'clock. So we look forward to seeing you all then. And until then, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.